The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor inches from my feet, and my daughter's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Get out. Go live with the pigs where you belong." I stood there in my worn floral dress, the pearls Gerald gave me on our 40th anniversary suddenly feeling like chains around my neck. Vivian's friends, women dripping in diamonds I couldn't pronounce the names of, giggled behind their manicured hands. One of them whispered something, and they all erupted in laughter that felt like needles in my skin. This wasn't how I thought my life would end up. 76 years old, being thrown out like garbage by the daughter I'd rocked to sleep every night for years. The daughter who used to beg me to braid her hair just like mine. The daughter who promised she'd take care of me when I got old. But that was before the money. Before the $7.5 million. My hands shook as I clutched my small bag tighter. Inside was everything I owned now, a change of clothes, Gerald's old watch, and a photo of us on our wedding day. Vivian had made sure I couldn't take anything else. Not even the quilt we'd sewn together, the one with patches from her baby clothes mixed in with pieces of Gerald's old work shirts. "Did you hear me, Mother?" Vivian's voice dripped with disgust as she stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. "I said get out. You're embarrassing me in front of my guests." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by those bony shoulders and shake her until the daughter I used to know came back. But all I could do was stare at this stranger wearing my child's face. "Vivian, please," I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. "I have nowhere to go. The apartment. Not my problem." She waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "You've got that disgusting cabin Dad left rotting in the woods. Go there. Live like the peasant you are." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. The cabin. God, I hadn't thought about that place in years. Gerald and I built it with our own hands back when we were young and stupid and thought love could fix anything. We'd spend summer weekends there, lying under the stars, planning a future that seemed so bright back then. But that was decades ago. The roof had caved in. The windows were broken. Last I heard, raccoons had taken it over. "I can't live there," I said, my voice breaking. "It's falling apart. There's no heat, no. Figure it out." Vivian turned her back on me, already done with the conversation. She picked up a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter and laughed at something one of her friends said, like I wasn't even there anymore. Like I'd never been there at all. I stood frozen for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. The other women in the room pretended to look away, but I could feel their eyes on me, judging, pitying. One of them, a blonde with lips so puffy they looked painful, actually pulled out her phone and took a picture. That's what snapped me out of it. The flash. The casual cruelty of it all. I turned and walked toward the door, my legs moving on autopilot. Each step felt like walking through concrete. Behind me, I heard Vivian laugh again, that high-pitched sound that used to bring me joy when she was little. Now it just made my stomach turn. The security guard at the front door wouldn't even look at me as he opened it. I stepped out into the cold October air, and the massive door slammed shut behind me with a sound that felt final. Permanent. I stood on that perfect stone pathway, surrounded by gardens that probably cost more than Gerald and I made in our entire lives, and I realized something that made my chest tight. I had nowhere to go. No one to call. No home to return to. My daughter had just made me homeless. The taxi driver who picked me up kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror like he was worried I might die in his back seat. I probably looked half dead already. When I gave him the address to the cabin, he tried to talk me out of it. "Ma'am, that's pretty far out. You sure someone's meeting you there?" I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? That my millionaire daughter just kicked me out and this falling apart cabin in the middle of nowhere was literally my only option? The drive took almost 2 hours. With every mile, the houses got smaller, the roads got rougher, and the trees got thicker. By the time we pulled up to what was left of the cabin, the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and red that would have been beautiful if I wasn't so terrified. The driver looked at the cabin, then back at me. "You can't stay here. How much do I owe you?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. He told me the fare, and I counted out exact change from the small amount of cash I had left. He took it reluctantly, still staring at me like he was making a huge mistake by leaving me there. "You got a phone at least?" Someone you can call?" I lied and said yes. He drove away slowly, like he was giving me time to change my mind and flag him down. I watched his taillights disappear into the trees and felt the last connection to civilization vanish with them. Then I turned to face the cabin. It was worse than I remembered. The roof had completely collapsed on one side. The front door hung sideways on broken hinges. Vines had grown up and through the walls like the forest was trying to swallow the whole thing. In the fading light, it looked less like a building and more like a corpse. But it was mine. Or it used to be. And it was all I had. I stepped through the doorway carefully, testing each floorboard before putting my full weight on it. Inside smelled like rot and animal droppings and years of abandonment. Something skittered away in the corner, probably rats. Maybe possums. I was too tired to care. There was an old chair in the corner that looked halfway stable. I brushed off the worst of the dirt and cobwebs and sat down, my body finally giving up after holding itself together all day. And then I cried. Deep, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for Gerald, who'd worked himself to death trying to provide for a daughter who spit on his memory. I cried for the daughter I'd lost somewhere along the way. I cried for myself, for the life I'd imagined and the reality I'd ended up with. When I finally stopped, it was full dark outside. No electricity, no heat, no light except what little moonlight made it through the broken roof. I was cold, hungry, and more alone than I'd ever been in my life. I wrapped myself in an old tarp I found in the corner and closed my eyes, praying for sleep to take me away from this nightmare for a few hours. But sleep didn't come easy. Instead, my mind kept replaying Vivian's face, twisted with disgust as she looked at me. The mother who'd given birth to her, raised her, sacrificed everything for her. How did we get here? When did my baby girl turn into a monster? I must have drifted off eventually because I woke up to pale morning light and the sound of birds. My whole body ached from sleeping on the floor. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. I spent that first day just trying to survive. I found a stream nearby where I could get water. I discovered some old canned goods in what was left of the cupboard, probably 10 years past their expiration date, but I was desperate enough to risk it. I used the tarp to cover the worst of the holes in the roof. By nightfall, I'd created something that was almost livable. Barely. But I was exhausted in a way that went deeper than my bones. The next few days blurred together. I spent my time making tiny improvements to the cabin, rationing my few cans of food, and trying not to think about the fact that winter was coming and I had no plan for survival. On the 4th day, while I was trying to reinforce a wall, my foot went through a weak section of the floor. I yanked it back up, cursing my luck. But when I looked down into the hole I'd made, something caught my eye. There was a gap under the floorboards that looked deliberate. Like a hiding spot. My heart started beating faster. I grabbed a piece of broken wood and pried up more of the floor, ignoring the splinters digging into my palms. There, in a hollow space beneath where Gerald and I used to sleep all those years ago, was a tin box. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. The metal was rusted but intact. And when I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. Inside were papers. Old deeds. Legal documents. And on top of everything, a letter in Gerald's handwriting addressed to me. "My dearest Clara," it began. I sat down hard on the floor, the box in my lap, and started reading the letter that would change everything. But I never could have imagined just how much. What was in that letter? What secret had Gerald kept hidden all these years? Drop your guess in the comments below. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the letter twice before I managed to unfold it completely. Gerald's handwriting stared back at me, every loop and curve as familiar as my own face. He'd written this in blue ink, the kind he always used because he said black was too serious for love letters. And this was a love letter, even if it was also something more. "My dearest Clara," I read aloud, my voice cracking in the empty cabin. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm so sorry I had to leave you. But more than that, I'm sorry for what I know is coming." I stopped, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. Even from beyond the grave, Gerald knew me better than anyone. I've watched our Vivian grow into a woman I barely recognize. You've seen it too, though you never wanted to say it out loud. She's got a hunger in her that scares me, Clara. Not a hunger for success or happiness, but for things. For status. For being better than everyone else, especially us. A sob caught in my throat. He'd known. All those years when I thought I was the only one who saw the coldness creeping into our daughter's eyes, Gerald had seen it too. That's why I did what I did. That's why I kept secrets from both of you, and I hope someday you'll forgive me for it. I looked up from the letter, my heart hammering against my ribs. What secrets? What had he done? My eyes dropped back to the page, hungry for answers. The money everyone thinks I left, the investments, the life insurance, I made sure Vivian would inherit all of it. I knew that's what she wanted. What she needed to finally leave us alone and stop being ashamed of where she came from. My chest tightened. Even in death, Gerald had been trying to protect me from our own daughter. But there's something else, Clara. Something I never told either of you about. I fumbled through the other papers in the box, spreading them across the dusty floor. Land deeds. Survey maps. Letters from something called Reichman Mining Corporation. My eyes couldn't focus on any single document long enough to make sense of it. Do you remember that summer when I went away for 3 weeks? I told you it was for work, helping my cousin fix up his property in Montana. That was a lie, and I'm sorry for it. I did remember. It was about 5 years before he died. He'd come back sunburned and exhausted, barely talking about the trip. I'd been hurt that he didn't want to share it with me, but I'd let it go because that's what you did in a marriage. I was buying land, Clara. 340 acres about 2 hours north of the cabin. It wasn't pretty land, rough, rocky, covered in scrub brush. But I bought it cheap from a man who needed money fast, and I bought it in your name only. Not mine. Not Vivian's. Yours. My breath came in short gasps. Land? In my name? Why had he never? I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry about the money I spent. It cleaned out our savings, and I knew you'd be upset. I figured I'd tell you eventually, maybe when we retired, and we could build something there together. Tears streamed down my face, dripping onto the letter and smudging some of the ink. But then something happened that changed everything. About 6 months before I died, I got a call from Reichman Mining. They'd been doing surveys in the area, and it turns out that ugly piece of land I bought sits on top of something valuable. Copper deposits, Clara. A lot of them. I stopped breathing. They wanted to buy the land from me. Offered me $8 million for it. $8 million. Can you believe that? No. I couldn't believe it. I read the sentence 3 more times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I didn't sell it. I told them I needed time to think about it, but really I was stalling. I knew if I sold it, if that money came into our lives, Vivian would find a way to get her hands on it. She'd lawyer up, claim she deserved half, tear us apart fighting over it. He was right. She absolutely would have. So I kept quiet. I kept negotiating with them, drawing it out, making them think I was playing hard to get. And I made sure every single document had your name on it, Clara. Not mine. The land is yours. The mineral rights are yours. Everything. My vision blurred as I tried to process what I was reading. Gerald had left me a fortune that Vivian didn't know existed. By now, Reichman has probably increased their offer. Mining rights are getting more valuable every year. But here's what I need you to understand, my love. This isn't just about money. This is about making sure you're taken care of when I'm gone. This is about making sure our daughter's greed doesn't leave you with nothing. I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing so hard my whole body shook. He'd known. He'd known exactly what would happen, and he'd protected me. If Vivian has treated you right, if she's honored our family and taken care of you like a daughter should, then share this with her. Split it evenly, or give her whatever you think is fair. But Clara, if she's shown you who she really is, if she's turned her back on you the way I fear she will, then you don't owe her a damn thing. I laughed through my tears at Gerald's rare use of profanity. He only cursed when he was really worked up about something. Use the money to live well. Use it to be comfortable. And if there's any justice in this world, let it show our daughter what she lost when she chose greed over love. The letter ended with 3 simple words: forever yours, Gerald. I sat there on that filthy floor, surrounded by documents I barely understood, and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. No, not just hope. Power. Vivian had thrown me away like garbage, assuming I had nothing and no one to turn to. She'd laughed while her friends took pictures of my humiliation. She'd sent me to this rotting cabin to die alone and forgotten. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated her father. And she'd underestimated me. I carefully folded Gerald's letter and put it back in the tin box. Then I started going through the other documents, really reading them this time. The land deed was definitely in my name, Clara Jean Whitmore, clear as day. The letters from Reichman Mining were dated from a few months before Gerald's death, and the last one mentioned scheduling a meeting to finalize terms. There was one more envelope in the box, thick and official looking. I opened it and found a business card paper-clipped to another letter. The card read Howard Chun, attorney at law with a local address and phone number. The letter was shorter than Gerald's, more businesslike. Mrs. Whitmore, your husband asked me to handle certain legal matters regarding property in your name. I have additional documents in my office that require your signature. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. Everything has been prepared according to Gerald's wishes. It was dated 2 weeks before Gerald died. I looked around the cabin, at the holes in the roof and the dirt floor and the evidence of years of decay. Then I looked back down at the papers in my lap. Everything was about to change. But first, I needed to make a phone call. The nearest payphone was 3 miles away at a gas station I'd passed on the drive in. I didn't have a cell phone. Vivian had convinced me I didn't need one, that I could just use hers if there was an emergency. Another way to keep me dependent, I realized now. I wrapped Gerald's tin box in the tarp to keep it safe and hid it under the floorboards again. Then I started walking. The October air was crisp and cold, and I hadn't eaten a real meal in days, but I felt stronger with every step. I had a purpose now. A plan. It took me almost an hour to reach the gas station. The kid behind the counter looked at me like I'd crawled out of a horror movie, which, to be fair, I probably looked like I had. My clothes were filthy, my hair was a mess, and I probably smelled like the cabin. You okay, ma'am? He asked, eyeing me nervously. I need to use your phone. It's an emergency. He hesitated, then pushed the cordless across the counter. Local calls only. I nodded and dialed the number on Howard Chen's business card. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear or cold. It was adrenaline. The phone rang 3 times before a professional voice answered. Chin and Associates, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with Howard Chun. My name is Clara Whitmore. He knew my husband, Gerald. There was a pause, then the sound of clicking keys. 1 moment, please. The hold music was some kind of classical piece that made me want to scream. I counted the seconds, watching the gas station kid pretend not to stare at me. Finally, the music cut off and a man's voice came on the line. Mrs. Whitmore? Is that really you? Yes, I found your letter. In a tin box my husband left. Oh, thank God. He sounded genuinely relieved. I've been trying to reach you for years. The address I had kept coming back as undeliverable, and when I called the phone number on file, it was disconnected. I was beginning to think I'd never find you. Years? He'd been looking for me for years? It's complicated. But I have the papers. The land deed and the letters from the mining company. Excellent. Those are crucial. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't know if you understand the situation, but the matter has become quite urgent. Reichman Mining has increased their offer substantially. They're now proposing $12 million for the property and mineral rights. The gas station tilted sideways. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. 12 million. Yes, ma'am. And that's likely to increase if we negotiate properly. But there are time-sensitive legal matters we need to address. Can you come to my office? Today, if possible. I looked down at my filthy clothes, thought about the 3-mile walk back to the cabin, and no way to get to town without calling a taxi I couldn't afford. I don't have transportation right now. Or money for a cab. Where are you calling from? I gave him the name of the gas station. Stay there. I'll send someone to pick you up within the hour. And Mrs. Whitmore? Don't tell anyone about this. Not yet. Is that clear? The urgency in his voice sent a chill down my spine. Why? What's wrong? I'll explain everything when you get here. Just trust me. And whatever you do, don't let anyone know about the land or the mining rights. Not until we have everything properly secured. He hung up before I could ask more questions. I handed the phone back to the kid and walked outside to wait. The morning sun was getting higher, warming the air a little. I sat on the curb, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. Yesterday morning, I was homeless and hopeless, convinced my life was over. Now I was sitting on a potential $12 million fortune that my daughter knew nothing about. A black car pulled up exactly 53 minutes later. The driver, a young woman in a professional suit, got out and approached me carefully. "Mrs. Whitmore?" I nodded. "I'm Sarah, Mr. Chen's assistant. He asked me to bring you to the office. There's water and snacks in the car if you're hungry." I climbed into the back seat, and she handed me a bottle of water and a granola bar. I devoured both in seconds while she drove, too hungry to be embarrassed. The law office was in a nice part of town I'd never been to before. Sarah led me through a lobby with marble floors and up an elevator to the 3rd floor. Everything was chrome and glass and money. Howard Chun was a small man in his 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He ushered me into his office and closed the door. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm so glad you finally found me. Please sit." I sank into a leather chair that probably cost more than my car used to. "Your husband was a very smart man. And he cared about you deeply. Can you tell me what's going on? Why is this so urgent?" He pulled out a thick folder from his desk and opened it. "Because 3 days ago, someone filed a claim contesting the ownership of your land." My blood turned to ice. "Who?" But even as I asked, I already knew the answer. Howard Chun looked at me with something like pity in his eyes and said the name that made my heart stop. "Your daughter, Vivian Whitmore." How did Vivian find out about the land? And what will Clara do now? Drop your thoughts below. I stared at Howard Chun like he'd just told me the sky was green. That's impossible. She doesn't know about the land. There's no way she could. She filed the claim under the presumption that any property acquired during your marriage should have been considered marital assets, which would make her entitled to a portion as an heir. Howard pulled out several documents and spread them across his desk. "She's arguing that your husband fraudulently transferred property to avoid it being part of the estate distribution." My hands clenched into fists in my lap. He didn't transfer anything. The land was always in my name. Only my name. I know that. You know that. But your daughter has hired a very expensive legal team, and they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Does Vivian know about the mining rights? About Reichman's offer?" "No. I only found out myself yesterday. How could she possibly?" "That's what I was afraid of." He pulled out another document, this one with an official-looking seal at the top. "2 weeks ago, someone requested a property record search on your name. That search would have revealed the land deed. And if they dug a little deeper, they would have found the correspondence with Reichman Mining that's part of the Public Geological Survey." My stomach dropped. "She's been investigating me?" "It appears so. And Mrs. Whitmore, the timing of her legal claim is suspicious. It was filed exactly 1 day after you were removed from her residence." The room spun. I gripped the armrests of the chair to keep from falling over. "She kicked me out knowing about the land?" "I believe she kicked you out to establish that you're financially destitute and dependent on her, which would strengthen her legal position. If she can prove you have no means of support and that she's been caring for you, she might argue that the property should be liquidated to pay for your care, with her as the controlling party." The cruelty of it took my breath away. Vivian hadn't thrown me out in a moment of anger or disgust. She'd done it strategically, as part of a plan to steal the one thing Gerald had left to protect me. "Can she win?" My voice came out as a whisper. Howard was quiet for a moment, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. "She has a case. Not a strong one, but with enough money and the right lawyers, she can drag this out for years. Legal fees alone could eat up a significant portion of the land's value. And during that time, Reichman Mining might lose interest or find copper deposits elsewhere. So she wins either way. Either she gets the land, or she makes sure nobody does." "Essentially, yes." I thought about Vivian's face when she threw me out. The cold calculation in her eyes. The way she'd orchestrated my humiliation in front of her friends. None of it had been spontaneous. She'd planned it all. What can I do? Howard smiled, and there was something almost predatory in it. We fight back. And we fight dirty. He pulled out a fresh legal pad and clicked his pen. First, we need to establish your competency and independence. Right now, her lawyers are painting you as a feeble, dependent elderly woman who can't make her own decisions. We need to show that you're sharp, capable, and fully in control of your faculties. I'm living in a falling-apart cabin with no electricity or running water. How is that supposed to prove I'm capable? It's not. Which is why we're going to fix that immediately. He scribbled something on the pad. I'm going to arrange for you to stay at a hotel. Something nice, but not ostentatious. We'll also set you up with a small advance against the land's value so you have money for necessities. An advance? Is that legal? Perfectly legal. The land is yours, and it has substantial value. Any bank would give you a loan against it. We're just cutting out the middleman. He kept writing. Second, we need to document everything. Every interaction you've had with Vivian, especially in the last few months. Every time she dismissed your needs, every cruel word, every broken promise. It all builds a case that she's not acting in your best interests. I thought about the years of small cruelties. The birthdays she forgot. The holidays she was too busy for. The times I called and she didn't answer, leaving me wondering if something was wrong until she finally texted back days later with some excuse. I can do that. Good. Third, and this is crucial, we need to move fast on the Reichman deal. If we can sell the mineral rights before her claim gains any traction, it becomes much harder for her to argue she deserves a portion of the proceeds. But won't that look suspicious? Like I'm trying to hide assets from her. You're not hiding anything. You're exercising your legal right to manage your own property. The land is yours. The mineral rights are yours. And as long as you're mentally competent, which we'll have documented by medical professionals, you have every right to sell them. He looked at me hard, his eyes searching my face. But I need to know, Mrs. Whitmore. Are you prepared for what this is going to do to your relationship with your daughter? Because once we go down this road, there's no coming back. I thought about Vivian's face twisted with disgust. Her voice telling me to live with the pigs. The sound of her laughter as I walked out of her mansion with nowhere to go. She destroyed our relationship the moment she threw me out. I'm just protecting what my husband left for me. All right then. Howard stood up and extended his hand. Let's make sure Gerald's wishes are honored. We shook on it, and I felt something shift in my chest. For the first time since Gerald died, I wasn't just surviving. I was fighting back. The next 3 hours were a blur of signing documents, making phone calls, and getting my picture taken for various forms of identification. Howard arranged for a doctor to come to the office and conduct a mental competency evaluation, which I apparently passed with flying colors. For a woman who spent the last week living in a ruin, you're remarkably sharp, the doctor said with a smile. Good memory, excellent reasoning skills, no signs of cognitive decline. I'll have my report to Mr. Chun by tomorrow morning. By the time we were done, it was late afternoon. Sarah drove me to a hotel downtown, nothing fancy, but clean and warm and everything the cabin wasn't. Howard had given me a credit card connected to an account he'd set up, with a limit of $10,000. For immediate expenses, he'd said. We'll settle everything properly once the Reichman deal closes. The hotel room was small but felt like paradise after the cabin. I took the longest, hottest shower of my life, washing away days of dirt and despair. Then I ordered room service, a burger and fries that tasted better than anything I'd eaten in months. I was halfway through my meal when my phone rang. Wait, I didn't have a phone. The ringing was coming from a bag Sarah had given me. I dug through it and found a basic cell phone with a note, so we can reach you. Mr. Chen's number is programmed in. Sarah. I answered it, expecting Howard's voice. Instead, I heard Vivian's. Mother. Her voice was tight with barely controlled rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? My hand trembled, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Hello, Vivian. Don't hello Vivian me. I just got a call from my lawyer. You hired Howard Chun? Are you kidding me right now? So her lawyers worked fast. Good to know. I'm simply protecting my interests. Your interests? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the land you and Dad hid from me? The property that should be part of the family estate. The property that was always in my name. That your father made sure was in my name. Only my name. Because he was senile and you manipulated him. The accusation hit like a slap. Your father was not senile. He was the smartest man I ever knew, and he protected me because he knew exactly what kind of person you'd become. Silence on the other end. When Vivian spoke again, her voice was ice. You're going to regret this. I have lawyers, Mother. Good ones. Expensive ones. And they're going to tear apart every single document, every single transaction. They're going to prove Dad wasn't in his right mind when he bought that land, and they're going to prove you're not in your right mind now. I just passed a mental competency evaluation with a licensed physician. Try again. Another pause. I could practically hear her mind working, recalculating. Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play. But remember, I have resources you don't have. Money. Connections. Power. You're a broke old woman living in a hotel on borrowed money. How long do you think you can afford lawyers? Longer than you think. We'll see about that. And Mother? When this is over, when I've won and you've lost everything, don't come crying to me. You made your choice. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to throw something. But mostly, I felt angry. Angrier than I'd been in years. Vivian thought she could intimidate me. She thought I was still the weak, dependent mother she'd pushed around for years. She was about to learn different. I called Howard Chun. She knows, I said when he answered. And she's threatening to fight this with everything she's got. Good. I blinked. Good. Mrs. Whitmore, the best thing your daughter could have done was call you directly and make threats. I assume you didn't record the call. No, I didn't think. That's fine. But from now on, every interaction with her, you document. Every call, every text, every email. Because threatening a mentally competent adult who's trying to manage their own property? That looks really bad to a judge. So what do we do now? Now we accelerate the Reichman deal. I've got a meeting set up with their representatives for tomorrow morning. If everything goes well, we could have a signed contract by end of business. That fast. They've been waiting years for this, Mrs. Whitmore. They're motivated. And once that contract is signed and the first payment is in your account, your daughter's claim becomes a lot more complicated. After we hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Vivian was in her mansion, surrounded by her expensive things and her fake friends, plotting her next move. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't know that tomorrow, I'd be sitting across from Reichman mining representatives. She didn't know that Gerald had left detailed documentation of everything. And she definitely didn't know that her own threatening phone call had just strengthened my legal position. I touched the window glass, cool against my palm, and made a promise to Gerald's memory. I wouldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her twist his final act of love into something ugly. And I definitely wouldn't let her get away with throwing me away like garbage. The war had started. But I wasn't going to lose. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Maybe it was the comfortable bed, or the food in my stomach, or the knowledge that I wasn't helpless anymore. Or maybe it was the sweet taste of justice finally within reach. The next morning, I woke up early and used some of the money Howard had given me to buy real clothes. Nothing fancy, just clean pants, a nice blouse, and shoes that didn't have holes in them. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked like someone who mattered. Sarah picked me up at 9, and we drove to a conference room in a different building downtown. Howard was already there, along with 3 people in suits who introduced themselves as representatives from Reichman Mining Corporation. Mrs. Whitmore, the lead representative, a woman named Patricia Stone, shook my hand warmly. We're so glad to finally meet you. Your late husband was a shrewd negotiator. He drove a hard bargain. That sounds like Gerald, I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. We sat down, and Patricia pulled out a folder thick with documents. We've prepared a comprehensive offer for the mineral rights to your property. Given current market conditions and our geological surveys, we're prepared to offer $13.2 million for a 15-year mining lease, with options for extension. $13.2 million. The number was so big it didn't feel real. That's an increase from your last offer, Howard noted. Copper prices have gone up, and our surveys indicate the deposit is larger than we initially thought. Mrs. Whitmore, if you accept this deal, you'll receive 40% upfront, that's $5.28 million, with the remainder paid out over the life of the lease. $5 million. Upfront. I tried to do the math on what that meant, but my brain couldn't process it. There are terms and conditions, of course, Patricia continued. Environmental protections, safety requirements, your rights to the surface land. But Mr. Chun has reviewed everything, and we believe it's more than fair. Howard leaned over and spoke quietly. It's an excellent offer. Better than I hoped for. But this is your decision, Mrs. Whitmore. Take your time. I looked at the contract in front of me. Pages and pages of legal language that would take hours to fully understand. But at the top of the first page, in bold letters, it said my name, Clara Jean Whitmore. Not Gerald's name. Not Vivian's name. Mine. I thought about my daughter, probably meeting with her lawyers right now, planning how to take this away from me. I thought about Gerald, working in secret to protect me, knowing this day would come. And I thought about myself, 6 days ago, wrapped in a tarp on the floor of a ruined cabin, convinced my life was over. Where do I sign? Patricia smiled. Right here. I picked up the pen, and with one signature, everything changed. But even as I signed my name, one question burned in my mind: how had Vivian found out about the land in the first place? And the answer, when it came 3 hours later, would shake everything I thought I knew. The first payment hit my bank account at 3:15 that afternoon. I was back in my hotel room when Howard called to confirm. Check your balance, Mrs. Whitmore. I logged into the banking app he'd set up for me on the new phone, and there it was. A number so large it took up most of the screen, $5,280,000. I had to sit down. That's real money. In my account. Right now. Yes, ma'am. And it's yours, free and clear. Reichman's lawyers expedited everything because they want to start preliminary drilling next week. The remainder will be paid out over the lease term according to the schedule we negotiated. I stared at that number until my eyes burned. Yesterday I'd been eating expired canned food in a condemned cabin. Today I was a millionaire. Mrs. Whitmore? You still there? I don't know what to do with it. Howard laughed, warm and genuine. That's what I'm here for. We'll set up proper investments, trusts, all of that. But for now, just breathe. You're secure. You're safe. And your daughter can't touch a penny of it. After we hung up, I just sat there for a long time, holding the phone. Part of me wanted to call someone, to share this impossible news. But who would I call? Gerald was gone. I had no close friends. Vivian had isolated me so gradually over the years that I hadn't even noticed it happening until it was done. I was completely alone with my fortune. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your windfall. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park, North Bench, 6 p.m. Come alone. Vivian wanted to meet. In public. Alone. Every instinct told me this was a bad idea. I called Howard immediately. Absolutely not, he said. She's going to try to intimidate you, maybe even record you saying something she can use in court. Don't go. But what if she wants to apologize? What if she wants to make things right? The silence on the other end told me what he thought of that. Mrs. Whitmore, Clara, please listen to me. Your daughter just found out you signed a deal worth over $13 million. A deal she was trying to steal. She doesn't want to apologize. She wants to find an angle. He was right. I knew he was right. But something in me needed to see Vivian one more time, needed to look her in the eye now that everything had changed. I'm going. But I'll keep my phone recording the whole time. Clara. I need to do this, Howard. I need to see her face when she realizes she lost. I hung up before he could talk me out of it. Riverside Park was a 20-minute walk from my hotel. I got there 15 minutes early and sat on a bench with a clear view of the north entrance. My phone was in my jacket pocket, recording app running. Vivian arrived exactly at 6, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my first car. But something was off. Her makeup didn't quite cover the dark circles under her eyes. Her hands shook slightly as she sat down next to me. She looked scared. Mother. Her voice was different too. Smaller. Less certain. Vivian. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the river flow past. A jogger ran by, earbuds in, oblivious to the drama unfolding on this quiet bench. I know you signed the Reichman deal today, she finally said. Yes. My lawyers say there's nothing I can do about it now. The money's in your account. The contract's executed. She turned to look at me, and I was shocked to see tears in her eyes. You really did it. You beat me. This wasn't what I expected. No anger, no threats, no demands. Just defeat. I didn't beat you, Vivian. I just protected what your father left for me. Dad. She laughed bitterly. I've been thinking about him a lot lately. Trying to understand why he did all this. Why he hid the land from me. He didn't hide it from you. He protected me from you. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Is that really what you think of me? That I'm some kind of monster? You threw me out of your house and told me to live with pigs. You laughed while your friends took pictures of me. You kicked me out knowing I had nowhere to go. My voice stayed steady, matter of fact. So yes, Vivian. That's exactly what I think of you. More tears spilled down her cheeks, ruining her expensive makeup. I was angry. I was hurt. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up with you and Dad? Watching other kids have things, go places, while we scraped by on that stupid farm. We weren't rich, but we loved you. We gave you everything we could. Everything you could wasn't enough. The words burst out of her, raw and jagged. I was embarrassed every single day. Kids made fun of my clothes, my shoes, my everything. Teachers looked at me with pity. And you and Dad just smiled and said love was more important than money. It is. No, it's not. Money is freedom. Money is respect. Money is being able to walk into a room and have people actually see you instead of looking through you like you're invisible. I studied my daughter's face, seeing clearly for the first time how deep her wounds went. This wasn't just greed. It was pain, old and infected, that had been festering for decades. So you decided to hurt me the way you'd been hurt. I decided to stop being the pathetic farm girl everyone looked down on. And when Dad died and left all that money, I thought finally I could be someone who mattered. She wiped at her eyes angrily. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough. No matter how much I have, I still feel like that poor kid everyone pitied. So you tried to take the one thing Gerald left to protect me. I hired a private investigator to look into your finances. I wanted to make sure you were okay, that you had enough to live on. She paused. At least that's what I told myself. But really, I was looking for something. Anything. Some proof that Dad had hidden more money somewhere. And you found the land deed. Yeah. And when I saw it was worth millions, something inside me just broke. It felt like Dad was choosing you over me even from the grave. Like I was still not good enough, even with all the money he left me. The sun was setting, painting the river in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful, but I couldn't enjoy it. All I felt was tired. So you kicked me out to strengthen your legal claim. Howard explained it all. Vivian's face crumpled. No. God, no. Mother, I kicked you out because I was furious. Because seeing you in my house, being kind and grateful and everything I'm not, made me hate myself even more. And I took it out on you because you were safe to hurt. She grabbed my hand, and I was too shocked to pull away. The legal claim came after. My lawyers suggested it. They said if you were destitute and I was supporting you, we could argue the land should be liquidated for your care. But the cruelty of throwing you out? That was all me. That was just me being a horrible person. I looked at our joined hands. Hers were soft, manicured, covered in expensive rings. Mine were rough, scarred from years of work and a week in the cabin. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand something. She squeezed my hand tighter. When I found out you'd signed the Reichman deal, my first reaction was rage. Pure, white-hot rage. I wanted to destroy you. I called my lawyers and told them to fight it anyway, to drag you through court until you had nothing left. You have 24 hours. Sign over the mineral rights, and this evidence disappears forever. Refuse, and I mail it to Marcus Webb, the police, and every news outlet in the state. Patricia dropped a business card on the ground at my feet. Your choice, Mrs. Whitmore. Choose wisely. She walked away, disappearing into the darkness beyond the barn. I stood there alone, Gerald's name caught in my throat. The emergency word I hadn't said. Because Tom and his team hearing this conversation wouldn't help. They couldn't make this decision for me. Only I could decide what to do with the truth. I drove back to the hotel in a daze. Tom and his team were waiting in my room, along with Howard. We heard everything, Howard said grimly. That was... Don't. I held up my hand. I can't talk about this right now. I need to think. Clara, she's blackmailing you. We can go to the police. And tell them what? That 20 years ago my husband covered up a crime? That my daughter almost killed someone? That I'm being forced to choose between protecting a criminal and losing everything Gerald worked for? I laughed, but it sounded broken. What exactly do you think the police will do? Howard had no answer. Tom cleared his throat. For what it's worth, the recording we got could be used as evidence against Patricia Stone. She's admitting to blackmail. And I'm admitting that Gerald committed witness tampering and fraud. We'd all go down. I sank onto the bed. Besides, it's not about legal options. It's about what's right. What's right is protecting what your husband left you, Howard said firmly. Is it? Is protecting money more important than justice for a boy whose life was destroyed? That boy's tragedy isn't your responsibility. But my daughter's crime is. The room fell silent. After they left, I lay in the dark and tried to figure out what Gerald would want me to do. He'd protected Vivian once at a terrible cost. Would he want me to protect her again? Or would he want me to finally let her face the consequences of her actions? I pulled out his letter and read it again. Only use this if you absolutely must. She's still our daughter. But was she? Was the woman who'd thrown me out, who'd tried to steal from me, who'd built her entire life on someone else's suffering, was that person still my daughter? Or had I lost her years ago, and just been too afraid to admit it? My phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. Mom, I know you're going through a lot right now. I just want you to know I'm here if you need me. I love you. I stared at those 3 words. I love you. Did she? Or was this just more manipulation, more strategy? Another text came through, this one from the unknown number. Tick-tock, Clara. 23 hours left. Make it count. I had to decide. Protect Vivian and lose everything Gerald had worked for. Or protect Gerald's legacy and let Vivian's past destroy her. There was no good choice. There was no right answer. There was only the decision I'd have to live with for the rest of my life. And I had 23 hours to make it. What would you do in Clara's position? Drop your answer below. The next chapter shows what she decides. I didn't make the decision that night. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. I called Jacob Webb. It took me 3 hours to track down his number. Howard tried to talk me out of it, said I was opening myself up to legal liability, but I didn't care. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to know what Vivian had taken from him. The phone rang 4 times before a man answered. His speech was slow, deliberate, like every word required effort. Hello? Mr. Webb? Jacob Webb? Yes. Who's this? My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm Vivian Whitmore's mother. The silence that followed was so long I thought he'd hung up. Why are you calling me? Because I just found out what my daughter did to you. And I'm so sorry. Another long silence. Then, your husband paid my witnesses to lie. Did you know that? No. Not until yesterday. Gerald kept it from me. He sent Vivian away and told me it was for her own good, that she needed space from the farm. I never knew why. I never knew what she'd done. She pushed me down concrete stairs because I broke up with her. His voice was flat, emotionless. I had a football scholarship. I was going to study engineering. I had a future. I know. I'm sorry. Those words aren't enough, but… You're right. They're not. But he didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. Why are you really calling, Mrs. Whitmore? Because someone has evidence of what happened. Real evidence. And they're going to give it to your brother unless I do what they want. Marcus. For the first time, emotion crept into his voice. What does Marcus have to do with this? I explained everything. Patricia Stone, the blackmail, the choice I had to make. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Mr. Webb. My brother has been looking for proof for 20 years. He spent his entire adult life trying to find evidence that would hold Vivian accountable. And now someone's going to just hand it to him. Yes. Unless I give up my land rights. And you're calling me because? Because I need to know if you want this. If reopening everything, going through a trial, having your life examined by lawyers and the media, if that would actually help you. Or if it would just cause more pain. He laughed, but it was bitter. You think you're being noble. But really, you're trying to ease your own guilt. Maybe. Probably. I don't know anymore. I pressed my hand against my forehead. I just know that people keep telling me what I should do, but nobody's asked the person who actually got hurt what he wants. More silence. Then, tell me about your daughter now. What kind of person did she become? So I told him. Everything. The cruelty, the greed, the way she'd thrown me away. The mansion built on money she hadn't earned. The fake friends and expensive clothes and complete lack of remorse for anything. She never changed, I finished. She never became better. And I don't know if that's my fault, or Gerald's, or just who she is. My therapist asked me something once, Jacob said slowly. She asked me if punishing Vivian would give me back what I lost. Would it give me back my scholarship, my career, my future? Would it undo the brain damage? Would it erase the years of rehabilitation? What did you tell her? I told her no. Nothing could give that back. But maybe it would stop me from being so angry all the time. Maybe it would let me finally move forward. And has it? Has being angry helped? No. His voice cracked. It's just made me lose more years. Different years, but still lost. I closed my eyes. So what do you want me to do? I want my brother to let it go. I want him to stop spending his life trying to avenge mine. I want him to have a future even if I don't. He paused. But that's not your decision to make, Mrs. Whitmore. That's between Marcus and me. But if you don't want the evidence made public. I didn't say that. I said I don't know if it'll help me. But maybe it'll help someone else. Maybe some other kid will think twice before pushing someone down the stairs if they know there might be consequences someday. He was right. This wasn't just about him, or Vivian, or me. It was about the principle. About whether people who hurt others should eventually face justice, even years later. Thank you for talking to me, I said quietly. Mrs. Whitmore? One more thing. Yes. Your husband spent $100,000 to cover up what your daughter did. To buy silence from 4 scared teenagers. That's the value he put on protecting her from consequences. Jacob's breathing was labored. What value do you put on it? He hung up. I sat in the dark hotel room, his question echoing in my head. What value did I put on protecting Vivian? Was it worth $80 million? Was it worth my integrity? Was it worth knowing I'd chosen my daughter over justice? My phone rang. Howard. It's 3 a.m. What are you doing awake? I could ask you the same thing. His voice was gentle. Clara, I've been thinking. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But I need you to understand something. What? If you give Patricia Stone those mineral rights, you're not just losing money. You're teaching Vivian that she can destroy lives without consequences. You're telling Jacob Webb that his suffering doesn't matter. And you're betraying everything Gerald actually stood for. Gerald covered up her crime. He obviously thought protecting her was more important than justice. Or he made a mistake. A mistake he spent the rest of his life regretting. Howard paused. Those papers he left you? The evidence he collected? He didn't destroy it, Clara. He kept it. He documented everything. Why would he do that unless some part of him knew he'd made the wrong choice? I hadn't thought of it that way. Gerald could have burned those documents. Could have made sure no evidence existed. But instead, he'd preserved it all and left it for me to find. Maybe he'd wanted me to make the choice he couldn't. Maybe he'd wanted me to do what was right, even if he'd been too weak to do it himself. I need to talk to Vivian, I said suddenly. Before I decide anything, I need to talk to her one more time. Clara, that's a bad idea. I need to look her in the eye and ask her about Jacob Webb. I need to see if she even remembers what she did. And if she doesn't. I stopped, not wanting to finish that sentence. If she doesn't, then what? Then I'll know she's beyond saving. And I'll know what to do. I called Vivian at 8 in the morning. She answered on the first ring, her voice artificially cheerful. Mom. I was hoping you'd call. Listen, I was thinking we could have lunch today, talk about everything. Do you remember Jacob Webb? The line went dead silent. Mom, I don't know what you're. Jacob Webb. 19 years old. You pushed him down a flight of stairs 20 years ago and left him with permanent brain damage. Do you remember him? I heard her breathing change. Fast, shallow, panicked. How do you, who told you? Do you remember him, Vivian? That was an accident. He fell. I didn't. 4 people saw you push him. They were wrong. They were drunk, they didn't see clearly, it was dark. Your father paid them to lie. $100,000 to keep you out of prison. Vivian made a sound like a wounded animal. Dad did what he had to do. I was 17. I was a kid. It would have ruined my life. It ruined Jacob's life. That's not my fault. He shouldn't have, she stopped abruptly. Shouldn't have what? Shouldn't have broken up with you. My voice was steel. You almost killed a boy because he didn't want to date you anymore. You don't understand. You weren't there. He humiliated me in front of everyone. He made me look pathetic. So you tried to murder him. It wasn't murder. It was just, I was angry, I wasn't thinking, I just pushed him and, she was crying now, but they were angry tears, not remorseful ones. Why are you bringing this up? That was 20 years ago. I've moved on. He should move on. He can't move on. He has brain damage. He lost his scholarship. His entire life changed because of what you did. Well, what do you want me to do about it now? I can't undo it. You could show remorse. You could apologize. You could take responsibility. For what? For being 17 and stupid? For making one mistake? Her voice turned sharp. Or is this about the money? Is someone trying to blackmail you with this? Because if they are, don't you dare pay them. That's ancient history. No one cares about something that happened 20 years ago. And there it was. The truth of who my daughter really was. She didn't care that she'd destroyed someone's life. She only cared that it might cost her something now. Vivian, if you could go back, if you could change what happened, I'd do the exact same thing. Her voice was cold, final. He embarrassed me. He deserved what he got. And if Dad hadn't paid off those witnesses, I would have beaten the charges anyway. I was a minor, first offense, good family. I would have gotten probation at most. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. You really believe that? I know that. Dad knew that. That's why he didn't make a big deal about it. He just handled it and we moved on. She paused. Now are you going to tell me who's trying to blackmail you, or do I need to guess? Nobody's blackmailing me. Then why bring up ancient history? Why dredge up something that doesn't matter anymore? It matters to Jacob Webb. Who cares? He's nobody. He's nothing. He never would have made it as an engineer anyway. I probably saved him years of failure. I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word. Couldn't stomach another second of her complete lack of humanity. Howard was right. Gerald was right. Even Vivian herself had just confirmed it. She wasn't sorry. She'd never be sorry. And she didn't deserve protection. I picked up Patricia Stone's business card and dialed her number. She answered immediately. "Mrs. Whitmore. Have you made your decision?" "I have." My voice was steady calm, despite the storm raging inside me. "And my answer is no." "No?" "You can give that evidence to Marcus Webb. You can give it to the police. You can give it to the media. I don't care anymore." I took a breath. My daughter destroyed a boy's life and never felt a moment of remorse. She just told me herself. She said he deserved it. She said it doesn't matter. "So you're choosing Gerald's land over your daughter's freedom?" "I'm choosing justice. Real justice. Not the kind Gerald bought for $100,000. The kind that says actions have consequences, even if those consequences take 20 years to arrive." Patricia was quiet. "Then, you realize this will destroy her. Prison time, criminal record, public humiliation. Everything she's built will collapse. Everything she built was built on someone else's suffering. Maybe it should collapse. And you can live with that? Knowing you could have saved her?" "I saved her once by not knowing what she'd done. I can't save her a second time by knowing and doing nothing." I looked at my reflection in the hotel mirror. Gerald spent his whole life protecting Vivian from herself. And all it did was create a monster. Maybe facing consequences is the only thing that can save her now. Or maybe it'll just destroy her completely. Then that's her choice. She had 20 years to become a better person. She chose not to. I'm not responsible for that. Patricia sighed. "All right. I'll give the evidence to Marcus Webb this afternoon. By tomorrow morning, the police will have it. By tomorrow evening, it'll be all over the news." "Wait. There's one condition." "What condition?" "Jacob Webb gets to decide whether to press charges. Not his brother. Not the police. Jacob himself. If he says no, if he says he doesn't want to pursue this, then it ends there. That's not how the criminal justice system works." "I don't care. This is about him, not about us. He's the one who got hurt. He should be the one who decides if going through a trial is worth it." Patricia considered this. "I'll make it happen. I know people in the DA's office. They'll consult with Jacob before moving forward." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You just made the hardest decision of your life. Let's see if you still think it was the right one in a few weeks." She hung up. I sat on the bed, feeling empty. Hollowed out. I'd just destroyed my daughter's life. Chosen money and principles over family. But when I thought about Jacob Webb's labored speech, about the future he'd lost, about Vivian's cold voice saying he deserved it, I knew I'd made the only choice I could live with. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you. J.W." Jacob. Somehow he already knew. Another text came through, this one from Howard. "Just got word from Patricia Stone. It's done. Are you okay?" Was I okay? No. I wasn't okay. I might never be okay again. But I was at peace with my decision. And sometimes, that's the best you can hope for. How would Vivian react when the truth came out? Comment your prediction below. The news broke 36 hours later. Local heiress linked 2 decades-old assault, screamed the headline across every news site. By noon, Vivian's face was everywhere. Photos of her at charity events, stepping out of expensive cars, laughing with her wealthy friends. And next to those photos, pictures of Jacob Webb. Before and after. The handsome teenager with a football scholarship and the grown man with a walker, struggling with the lasting effects of traumatic brain injury. The story was catnip for the media. Rich girl nearly kills working-class boy and gets away with it for 20 years, protected by her father's money and connections. Now facing justice thanks to evidence preserved by that same father. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I watched it unfold from my hotel room, the news playing on a loop. Vivian's lawyers issued a statement denying everything. Then they issued a second statement saying their client wouldn't comment on pending legal matters. Then they stopped issuing statements altogether as the evidence became public. Photos of the crime scene. Witness statements from before Gerald paid them off. Medical records documenting Jacob's injuries. It was all there, undeniable and damning. By day 2, the police had arrested Vivian. I watched the footage of her being led out of her mansion in handcuffs, her face pale, her expensive clothes suddenly looking ridiculous in the harsh light of justice. She kept her head down, wouldn't look at the cameras, wouldn't speak to the reporters screaming questions. But just before she got into the police car, she looked up. And for one brief moment, her eyes found the camera. She looked terrified. She looked like my little girl again. I turned off the television. Howard came to the hotel that evening with updates. The DA is charging her with aggravated assault. Given the severity of Jacob's injuries and the evidence of premeditation, they're asking for 5 to 10 years. Premeditation. 3 witnesses say she threatened Jacob earlier that evening. Said if he didn't take her back, she'd make him sorry. That establishes intent. Howard sat down heavily. Her lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal. They're arguing that she was a minor at the time, that 20 years have passed, that she's been a productive member of society since then. Has she been productive? She's done charity work. Donated to hospitals and schools. On paper, she looks like a model citizen. On paper. I laughed bitterly. She threw me out and told me to live with pigs. She tried to steal my land. She told me Jacob Webb deserved what he got. But on paper, she's a model citizen. Clara, there's something else you should know. Howard pulled out his phone and showed me a news article. Marcus Webb held a press conference today. I read the article, my hands shaking. Marcus had stood in front of cameras and told the story of his brother's suffering. The years of rehabilitation. The lost opportunities. The personality changes and struggles that had defined Jacob's entire adult life. And then he'd said something that made my breath catch. My brother doesn't want Vivian Whitmore to go to prison. He says 20 years of anger and resentment has already cost him too much of his life. He won't let it cost him any more. He's asking the DA to offer a plea deal that focuses on restitution and community service rather than incarceration. Jacob doesn't want her in prison? Apparently not. He's asking for $1 million in compensation for medical bills and lost wages. He wants Vivian to publicly apologize. And he wants her to serve 1,000 hours of community service working with victims of assault. That's it? After everything she did? He says he wants her to understand what she took from him, not to rot in a cell. He thinks actually working with people whose lives have been destroyed by violence might teach her something that prison never could. I didn't know what to say. Jacob Webb, the victim, was showing more compassion than I had. More compassion than Vivian had ever shown anyone. What does Vivian's lawyer say? They're considering it. But Vivian herself is refusing. She's insisting on going to trial. She says she won't apologize for something that was an accident, and she won't admit to something she didn't do. She still thinks she'll win. Either that, or her pride won't let her accept responsibility, even when doing so would keep her out of prison. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Whitmore? This is Anne Fitzgerald, I'm a producer for. I hung up. It rang again immediately. Different number. I ignored it. You'll want to change your number, Howard said. The media found out you're connected to the case. They're going to hound you for a statement. I don't have a statement. They'll want to know if you support your daughter. If you think she should go to prison. If you knew about the crime. They'll dig into everything. Let them dig. They won't find anything more shameful than what I already know. Over the next week, the media circus intensified. Legal experts debated the case on television. Some argued that prosecuting a crime after 20 years was pointless. Others insisted that justice delayed wasn't justice denied. Vivian's supporters painted her as a troubled teenager who'd made one mistake and deserved forgiveness. Jacob's supporters called her a monster who'd escaped justice for too long. I didn't watch much of it. But I couldn't completely avoid it either. On day 7, Vivian called me from jail. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom. Her voice was small, broken. Nothing like the cold woman who'd told me Jacob deserved what he got. Vivian. I need you. She was crying. I need you to help me. Please. Help you how? Tell them I'm not a bad person. Tell them about my childhood, about how hard things were. Tell them I've changed. Have you? Silence. Then, what do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I regret it? Fine. I'm sorry. I regret it. Is that what you want to hear? I want to hear that you mean it. I mean it. I've been sitting in this cell for a week, Mom. I've had time to think. I've had time to understand what I did wrong. What did you do wrong, Vivian? I hurt someone. I hurt Jacob. And I should have taken responsibility. Should have. But you didn't. And when I asked you about it last week, you said he deserved it. I was angry. I was defensive. You ambushed me with this after 20 years, so it's my fault you showed no remorse. That's not what Mom, please. Please don't do this to me. I'm your daughter. Your only daughter. You can't let me go to prison. I'm not the one sending you to prison. Your choices did that. But you could help me. You have money now. You could pay Jacob off. Pay him whatever he wants. Make this go away. And there it was. The real reason for the call. Jacob doesn't want my money. He wants you to acknowledge what you did. To apologize. To show genuine remorse. I did apologize. What more does he want? He wants sincerity. Something you're apparently incapable of. Mom. Do you even remember pushing him? Do you remember his face when he fell? Do you remember anything besides your own humiliation? I remember everything, she screamed. I remember him laughing at me in front of his friends. I remember him saying I was too clingy, too desperate, too much. I remember everyone staring at me like I was pathetic. And yes, I remember pushing him. I remember wanting him to hurt the way I was hurting. Finally, the truth. And do you regret it? I regret getting caught. Her voice went cold again. I regret Dad documenting everything. I regret that you found those papers. But do I regret making Jacob pay for humiliating me? No. He made me feel worthless. He deserved to know what that felt like. My heart broke all over again. Then there's nothing I can do for you. Mom, wait. I hung up. Howard was right. Vivian would never change. Prison wouldn't change her. Community service wouldn't change her. Nothing would change her because she didn't see anything wrong with what she'd done. She was broken in a way I couldn't fix. Maybe in a way that couldn't be fixed at all. That night, I received a letter. It was hand-delivered to the hotel, addressed to me in careful handwriting. Inside was a single page from Jacob Webb. Mrs. Whitmore, I owe you an apology. I manipulated you. I used your husband's secrets and your daughter's crimes to try to steal from you. I told myself it was about justice for Jacob, but really, it was about anger and revenge and my own unresolved grief over my father's death. When you chose to release the evidence without trading it for anything, when you put justice over profit, it showed me something I'd forgotten. Real justice isn't about revenge. It's about doing what's right even when it costs you everything. I'm resigning from Reichman Mining. The company didn't know about my personal connection to this case or my attempts to manipulate you. They're good people, and your contract with them is solid. You don't need to worry about challenges from me or anyone else. I hope someday you can forgive me. But more than that, I hope you can find peace. You made an impossible choice with grace and integrity. Your husband would be proud. And Jacob Webb is grateful. Sometimes, that has to be enough. Patricia Stone. I set the letter down and looked at Gerald's photograph, the one I'd carried with me from the cabin. He was smiling in it, young and handsome and full of hope for the future. Did I do the right thing? I asked his image. Did I honor your memory, or did I betray it? He didn't answer, of course. The dead never do. But somewhere deep in my heart, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I'd done what he couldn't bring himself to do. I'd chosen the hard right over the easy wrong. I'd let justice take its course, even when it hurt. And maybe that was the greatest gift I could give him. Not protecting the daughter he'd tried so hard to save, but finally admitting that some people couldn't be saved. Some people had to save themselves. Or not. The choice was Vivian's now. And for the first time in her life, she'd have to make it without anyone running interference for her. Without anyone buying her way out of consequences. Without anyone protecting her from herself. Maybe prison would change her. Maybe it wouldn't. But at least now, she'd have the chance to find out who she really was when all the money and privilege and protection were stripped away. And I'd have the chance to find out who I was too. Not Gerald's wife. Not Vivian's mother. Not the poor woman from the farm who everyone looked down on. Just Clara. Finally, after all these years, just myself. That night, I slept better than I had in months. And when I woke up the next morning, I started planning my future. A future built on truth, not lies. On justice, not protection. On my own choices, not someone else's manipulation. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be perfect. But it would be mine. And for the first time in my 76 years, that felt like enough. What happened to Patricia Stone after this? And will Vivian ever truly change? Keep watching to find out. 6 months passed. I didn't stay in that hotel. Couldn't. The walls felt like they were closing in, and every reflection in the mirror showed me a woman I didn't quite recognize anymore. Instead, I bought a small house on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, a porch, a yard with actual grass. It reminded me of the farmhouse Gerald and I had lived in when we were young, before life got complicated. I spent my days gardening, reading, and learning how to be alone without being lonely. It was harder than it sounded. The money from Reichman sat mostly untouched in investments Howard had set up. I lived modestly, taking only what I needed. The rest would be there for emergencies, or for charity, or for whatever purpose revealed itself down the road. I didn't visit Vivian in prison. She didn't ask me to. But every week, a letter arrived. Always the same handwriting. Always the same careful, deliberate tone. They were from Jacob Webb. The first one came 2 weeks after the sentencing. It was short, almost businesslike. He told me about starting physical therapy again, about a new doctor who thought they could improve his mobility. He thanked me again for making sure the truth came out. I wrote back, not really knowing what to say. Apologized again for what my daughter had done. Told him I was glad he was getting help. His response came quickly. He said I didn't need to apologize anymore. That he didn't blame me for Vivian's actions. That parents could only do so much, and sometimes their children chose their own paths regardless. It was kind. Kinder than I deserved. The letters continued. Once a week, like clockwork. He told me about his life, about the small triumphs and frustrations of living with a disability. About his brother Marcus, who was finally letting go of his need for revenge and building a relationship with his own family. About his therapy sessions, where he was working through decades of anger and resentment. I told him about my new house, about learning to cook for one, about the garden I was planting. I told him things I couldn't tell anyone else, about my guilt over Vivian, about my confusion over Gerald's choices, about feeling unmoored without the role of mother to define me. He understood. Or at least, he listened without judgment. 3 months in, he asked if I'd like to meet for coffee. I almost said no. It felt wrong somehow, developing a friendship with the man my daughter had nearly killed. Like I was betraying her, even though she'd already betrayed everyone else. But I said yes anyway. We met at a small cafe downtown. I got there early, nervous as a teenager on a first date. When Jacob arrived, moving slowly with his walker, I stood up too fast and knocked over my water glass. He laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine, and said, "I'm the one who's supposed to be clumsy." We talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. He told me about his job at a local library, shelving books and helping patrons with research. It wasn't the engineering career he dreamed of, but he liked it. Found it peaceful. I told him about Gerald, about the good years before Vivian's bitterness poisoned everything. About the farm, about the simple life we'd built. You miss it, he observed. The simplicity. Every day. Everything got so complicated so fast. Sometimes I wish I could go back to when our biggest problem was whether the chickens would lay enough eggs. My therapist says we can't go back, but we can move forward toward something that feels like those good times. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. I think that's what I'm trying to do. Build a life that feels like the one I lost, even if it looks different. Is it working? Some days. Other days I'm still angry about everything I missed. All the experiences I didn't get to have. He looked at me directly. But being angry was killing me. At least now I'm trying to live. As we parted ways, he squeezed my hand. Thank you for meeting me. I know it's strange, us being friends. But you're the only person who understands both sides of this story. He was right. I understood Vivian's childhood, the insecurities that had fed her cruelty. And I understood Jacob's loss, the future stolen by one moment of violence. Living in that understanding was painful. But it was also honest. And after years of living in Gerald's carefully constructed lies, honesty felt like oxygen. Meanwhile, news of Vivian filtered back to me through Howard, who'd been keeping tabs on her case. She was a model prisoner, apparently. Kept her head down, did her work, caused no trouble. But she also didn't participate in any of the rehabilitation programs. Didn't attend the anger management groups. Didn't engage with the counselors trying to help her understand her actions. She was serving her time, but she wasn't changing. Give her time, Howard said. 2 years is a long time to think. But I knew my daughter. She wasn't thinking. She was enduring. Counting down the days until she could leave and return to her old life. Except her old life didn't exist anymore. Her mansion had been sold to pay Jacob's restitution and her legal fees. Her friends had abandoned her the moment the scandal hit. Her reputation was destroyed. She had nothing to go back to. Maybe that would force change. Maybe hitting rock bottom would finally wake her up. Or maybe she'd just find new ways to be bitter and blame everyone else for her problems. 4 months after our first coffee, Jacob invited me to a support group meeting. It was for families of assault victims and the victims themselves, a safe space to talk about trauma and healing. I think you'd benefit from it, he said gently. You're dealing with trauma too. Different trauma, but still real. I almost said no. I wasn't the victim here. I had no right to claim that space. But Jacob insisted. You lost your daughter to violence. Maybe not physical violence against you, but violence nonetheless. That's worth grieving. So I went. The meeting was in a church basement, a circle of folding chairs occupied by people who looked as uncertain as I felt. A woman in her 40s ran the group. Her name was Diana, and she'd lost her son to a drunk driver 15 years ago. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't know what to say. My name is Clara. My daughter hurt someone. Badly. And I'm struggling with how to feel about that. Are you angry at her? Diana asked. Yes. And no. And I don't know. The words tumbled out. I'm angry that she did it. I'm angry that she's not sorry. I'm angry that my husband covered it up. But I also remember her as a little girl, before everything went wrong, and I'm sad for that girl. I'm sad that somewhere along the way, she turned into someone I don't recognize. That's grief, Diana said softly. You're grieving the daughter you thought you had. But she's not dead. She's just gone. Replaced by someone cruel. Sometimes people die without actually dying. The person they were ceases to exist, even though their body keeps walking around. Diana looked around the circle. All of us here are grieving someone or something. A loved one lost to violence. A sense of safety stolen by crime. A future that no longer exists. Your grief is just as valid as anyone else's. I cried then. Properly cried for the first time since this all started. Not quiet tears, but deep body-shaking sobs. The group let me. Nobody rushed me or told me to calm down. They just sat with me in my pain. When I finally stopped, Jacob handed me a box of tissues and said, "Welcome to the club nobody wants to join." I laughed despite myself. After the meeting, several people came up to talk to me. Shared their stories. Offered support. Gave me phone numbers to call if I needed to talk. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. The letters from Vivian started in month 5. They came sporadically at first. Short, stilted notes that said nothing of importance. I'm fine. The food is bad. I miss my house. Then they got longer. More reflective. Mom, I've been thinking about what I did. Not to Jacob, I know what I did there. But to you. Throwing you out. Trying to steal from you. Saying those horrible things. I don't know why I did it. Or maybe I do know, and I just don't want to admit it. I almost didn't respond. But something in that letter, some small crack in her armor, made me pick up a pen. Vivian, I'm glad you're thinking about your actions. Real change starts with honest reflection. But thinking isn't enough. You have to feel. You have to let yourself understand the pain you caused. Not just acknowledge it, but truly feel it. Her next letter was angry. You want me to feel pain? I'm in prison, Mom. I feel plenty of pain. I lost everything. Isn't that enough? I wrote back, you lost things. Material possessions. Social status. But have you considered what Jacob lost? What I lost? Have you felt that pain, or just your own? She didn't write back for 3 weeks. When she did, the letter was different. I don't know how to feel other people's pain. I don't think I ever learned how. When I was growing up, all I felt was my own embarrassment, my own shame at being poor. I couldn't see past it to understand that other people were struggling too. That other people had feelings that mattered as much as mine. Dad always said I'd grow out of it. That I was just a kid going through a phase. But I didn't grow out of it, did I? I just got better at hiding it behind nice clothes and charity donations. I don't know if I can change, Mom. I don't know if I even know how to be a different person than the one I've been for 47 years. But I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to see past myself for the first time in my life. It's hard. It's so hard. And most days I fail. But I'm trying. I held that letter for a long time, reading it over and over. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. But it was honest. And maybe honesty was the first step. I wrote back, keep trying. That's all any of us can do. The support group became a regular part of my life. Every Tuesday evening, I'd drive to that church basement and sit in that circle of broken people trying to put themselves back together. Jacob came too, when his schedule allowed. We'd go for coffee afterward, talking about the meeting or books or nothing in particular. People started to notice. Howard raised an eyebrow when I mentioned meeting Jacob for lunch. Sarah smiled knowingly when I said I was going to coffee. It's not like that, I insisted. We're just friends. We understand each other. Sure, Howard said, not believing me for a second. But it wasn't romantic. It was something deeper and stranger than that. We were bound together by shared trauma, by Vivian's violence creating a connection neither of us wanted but both of us needed. We were each other's witness to something terrible. And somehow, that made us each other's hope that something good could come from it anyway. 6 months after Vivian's sentencing, Marcus Webb called me. Mrs. Whitmore, I wanted you to know that I'm closing my practice. The private investigation business. Oh? Why? Because I built my entire career on anger. On trying to find evidence against people who'd gotten away with crimes. And I've realized that all it did was make me bitter and isolated. He paused. My brother is healing. Not from his injuries, those are permanent, but from the trauma. He's building a life. Making friends. Finding joy. And I'm still stuck in the past, fighting battles that don't matter anymore. What will you do instead? I don't know yet. Something that builds up instead of tears down. Something that creates instead of destroys. He laughed softly. Maybe I'll volunteer at the library with Jacob. He says it's peaceful there. It sounds like he's been a good influence on you. He has. And honestly, so have you. His voice grew serious. What you did, choosing justice even though it cost you your daughter, that took guts. It showed me that real strength isn't about revenge. It's about doing what's right even when it hurts. After we hung up, I sat on my porch and watched the sunset. The sky was orange and pink and purple, colors bleeding into each other like watercolors. Somewhere, Vivian was in a cell, hopefully learning to see past herself. Somewhere, Jacob was at work, shelving books and helping patrons, building a life from the ruins of his dreams. Somewhere, Marcus was figuring out who he could be when he stopped being angry. And I was here, in my small house with my small garden, trying to figure out who Clara Whitmore was when she wasn't defined by being someone's wife or someone's mother. It was strange territory. Uncharted. But for the first time in my 76 years, I was excited to explore it. My phone buzzed. A text from Jacob: "Group is cancelled tonight. Diana has the flu. Want to grab dinner instead? There's a new Italian place downtown." I smiled and typed back, "Sounds perfect." As I got ready to go, I caught sight of Gerald's photograph on my dresser. I'd kept it there, a reminder of where I'd come from. "I hope you're at peace," I told his image. "I hope you know I tried my best with what you left me. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest." And maybe, just maybe, that was what he'd wanted all along. Not perfection. Just truth. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Because that's when truth matters most. What will Clara's future look like? Will Vivian truly change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The knock on my door came on a Tuesday morning, 18 months after Vivian's sentencing. I was in the garden, pulling weeds and listening to birds, when I heard it. Loud, insistent, official sounding. My first thought was that something had happened. That Vivian was hurt. That there'd been an incident at the prison. I rushed to the door, dirt still on my hands, and pulled it open. Vivian stood there. Not in an orange jumpsuit. Not behind glass or chains. Just standing there in regular clothes, jeans and a plain blue shirt, looking thinner and older and somehow smaller than I remembered. "Hi, Mom." I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. I just stared. I got out early. Good behavior. She shifted uncomfortably. "Can I come in?" I stepped back wordlessly, and she walked into my small house. She looked around, taking in the modest furniture, the simple decorations, the photographs on the wall. "It's nice," she said quietly. "Cozy." "What are you doing here, Vivian?" She sat down on the couch without being invited. I didn't have anywhere else to go. The mansion is gone. My friends won't return my calls. My bank accounts are frozen until I finish paying off Jacob's restitution. I'm homeless, Mom. Just like you were when I threw you out. The parallel wasn't lost on me. "So you came here for money?" "No." She looked up, and I was shocked to see tears in her eyes. "I came here to apologize. Really apologize. Not the performance I did in court. Not the fake words my lawyer wrote. But a real apology from me to you." I sat down across from her, wary. "I'm listening." "I was a terrible daughter. I was cruel and selfish, and I treated you like garbage. You gave me everything, and I repaid you by humiliating you and throwing you away." The tears spilled over. And the worst part is, I don't think I would have ever realized how terrible I was if you hadn't let me face consequences. If you'd bailed me out like Dad always did, I'd still be that person. "And you're not that person anymore?" "I don't know. I'm trying not to be." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. It was horrible, Mom. But it was also the first time in my life that I couldn't buy my way out of problems. Couldn't manipulate people. Couldn't use money or status to avoid facing myself. I had to actually sit with who I was. And I hated what I saw. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation. The old Vivian would have known exactly what to say, exactly how to play on my emotions. But this woman looked genuinely lost. "What do you want from me, Vivian?" "I want to know if there's any way you could ever forgive me. Not now, I don't expect that. But someday. If I work really hard and become a better person, could there be a someday where we're mother and daughter again?" My heart cracked. Because despite everything, despite all the pain and betrayal, part of me still saw the little girl who used to braid her hair like mine. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I want to believe you've changed. But you've lied to me so many times. How do I know this isn't just another performance?" "You don't. I can't prove it with words. I can only prove it with time and actions." She stood up. "So I'm not going to ask you for money or a place to stay or anything else. I'm going to figure out my life on my own. But I wanted you to know that I understand what you did. Choosing justice over protecting me. It felt like betrayal at the time. But now I understand it was love. The hardest kind of love. The kind that says, I care about you too much to let you keep destroying yourself. She walked toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Mom? I wrote to Jacob Webb. A real letter, not a legal apology. I told him everything, how jealous I was, how insecure, how his rejection made me feel worthless, so I wanted him to feel worthless too. I told him I was sorry, and that I understood if he never forgave me. He doesn't owe me anything. Did he write back? Not yet. Maybe he never will. But I needed to say it anyway. For him, not for me. She opened the door to leave. Vivian, wait. She turned back, hope flickering in her eyes. There's a support group that meets every Tuesday at St. Mary's Church. For people dealing with trauma and violence. I think it might help you. You go there? Yes. So does Jacob. She flinched at his name. I don't know if I could face him. That's up to you. But the offer stands. She nodded and left. I watched through the window as she walked down the street, her shoulders hunched, carrying nothing but a small backpack. She looked vulnerable. Human. She looked like she was finally facing the world without armor. I didn't know if she'd actually changed. Time would tell. But for the first time in decades, I had hope that maybe, just maybe she could. That evening, I met Jacob for dinner as planned. You'll never guess who showed up at my door this morning, I said as we sat down. Vivian. I blinked. How did you know? Because she showed up at my door yesterday. He took a sip of water. She wanted to apologize in person. I told her I wasn't ready for that yet, but I appreciated the letter she'd sent. Was it a good apology? It was honest. Which is more than I expected. He set down his glass. She told me about her childhood, about feeling poor and worthless. About how my rejection triggered all those feelings. She wasn't making excuses, she made that clear. But she wanted me to understand where the violence came from. And did that help? A little. It doesn't excuse what she did. But it humanizes her. Makes her less of a monster and more of a broken person who broke other people. He smiled sadly. My therapist says that's progress. Do you think she's really changed? I think she's trying. Whether that's the same as changing, I don't know yet. He leaned back in his chair. But here's what I've realized, I don't need her to change for me to heal. Her transformation isn't about me. It's about her. And my healing isn't about her either. It's about me. When did you get so wise? About 6 months ago when you told me I was wasting my life being angry. He grinned. Turns out you were right. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jacob said, I've been thinking about something. A project. What kind of project? A support center. For victims of violence and their families. A place where people can get counseling, legal help, job training, all the resources they need to rebuild their lives. His eyes lit up as he talked. I was thinking we could call it the Second Chance Center. Because everyone deserves a second chance at life, even after trauma tries to destroy them. That's a beautiful idea. I was hoping you'd think so. Because I was hoping you'd want to help me start it. He pulled out a folder. I've been doing research, talking to lawyers and therapists and victims advocates. It's feasible. But it needs funding and someone with business sense to help get it off the ground. I looked at the proposal he'd put together. Page after page of careful planning, budget projections, mission statements. You've really thought this through. I've had a lot of time to think. And I've realized that the best way to honor what happened to me is to make sure it helps other people. To turn trauma into purpose. I thought about Gerald's money sitting in investments. About the millions of dollars I'd been holding on to without really knowing what to do with them. How much do you need to start? We'd need about $500,000 for the first year. That would cover renting space, hiring staff, and providing initial services. After that, we could apply for grants and donations. What if I gave you $1 million? Would that give you 2 years to get established? He stared at me. Clara, that's too much. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. I'm offering. I looked at the proposal again. Gerald left me that money. But he also left me a choice about what to do with it. And I think using it to help people heal from violence, that would honor his memory better than anything else I could do. Jacob's eyes filled with tears. You're sure? I'm sure. He reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you. This is going to change lives. I hope so. God knows enough lives have been damaged by this whole mess. Time to start building instead of destroying. Over the next few months, the Second Chance Center came together. We found a building, hired staff, spread the word through support groups and community organizations. The opening day was small but meaningful. 20 people showed up, victims of assault, robbery, domestic violence. People whose lives had been derailed by someone else's actions and who were trying to find their way back. Jacob gave a short speech about why we'd started the center. About turning pain into purpose. About second chances and healing. I stood in the back and watched, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the toxic pride Vivian had built her life around, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd done something good. Something that mattered. As people explored the center, signing up for counseling sessions and job training programs, someone touched my arm. Vivian. She looked different again. Healthier. Her eyes were clearer, her posture straighter. I heard about this place. About what you and Jacob are doing. She looked around. It's amazing, Mom. What are you doing here? I came to volunteer. If you'll have me. She handed me a paper. I've been working at a women's shelter, helping with administrative stuff. They wrote me a reference. I thought maybe I could do something similar here. I looked at the reference. It was glowing. It talked about Vivian's dedication, her compassion, her willingness to do unglamorous work without complaint. You've been volunteering at a shelter? For 3 months. It's part of my community service requirement. But also. She paused. I needed to understand what it's like for people with nothing. People like you were when I threw you out. I needed to see the humanity in vulnerability. I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Vivian continued. I know I don't deserve that yet. Maybe I never will. But I'm asking for a chance to contribute. To be part of something that helps instead of hurts. I looked at Jacob, who'd come over to see what was happening. He and Vivian made eye contact for the first time since the trial. Hello, Jacob, she said quietly. Vivian. The air between them was thick with history and pain. I don't expect you to want me here, Vivian said. This is your project. Your center. If you say no, I'll understand and I'll leave. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, we help everyone here. Victims and perpetrators. People who've been hurt and people who've done the hurting. Because trauma spreads in all directions. If you're serious about volunteering, we'll put you to work. I'm serious. Then you can start by helping sort donations in the back room. It's not glamorous. I don't need glamorous. I need purpose. She looked at me one more time. Thank you for not giving up on the idea that I could be better. As she walked toward the back room, Jacob let out a long breath. That was hard, he admitted. Are you okay? No. But I will be. He watched Vivian disappear through a doorway. My therapist says part of healing is allowing people to change. Not forgiving immediately, but not closing the door completely either. Leaving space for the possibility of redemption. That's very mature of you. It's very exhausting is what it is. He smiled tiredly. But if this center is going to help people move forward from trauma, I need to be willing to move forward too. Even when it's uncomfortable. You're a better person than I am. No. Just a person who's had a lot of therapy. Over the following months, Vivian showed up every Tuesday and Thursday. She sorted donations, answered phones, filed paperwork. She did whatever needed doing without complaint. And slowly, very slowly, she started to change. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But in small, incremental ways. She smiled more. Laughed occasionally. Started asking people about their lives instead of just talking about her own struggles. One day I found her in the break room, crying quietly. What's wrong? I was talking to a woman who came in today. Her husband beat her for 15 years before she finally got out. And she was apologizing to me. Apologizing for taking up our time, for being a burden, for not leaving sooner. Vivian wiped her eyes. She reminded me of you. The way you apologized for everything, even things that weren't your fault. And I realized I did that to you. I made you feel like you were a burden, like you didn't deserve space or help or love. Yes, you did. How do I fix that? You can't. You can only do better going forward. She nodded, accepting that hard truth. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying. I know you are. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement. And that was something. A year after the center opened, we held an anniversary celebration. Over 300 people had come through our doors in that first year. Some for counseling. Some for job training. Some just for a safe space to exist while they figured out their next steps. The success rate wasn't perfect. Some people couldn't be helped, at least not yet. But enough people found their way forward that we knew the center was making a difference. During the celebration, Jacob asked if he could say something. This center exists because Clara Whitmore chose justice over comfort. She chose truth over convenient lies. And she chose to use her resources to build something good from something terrible. He looked at me with warmth in his eyes. I thought I wanted revenge on the person who hurt me. But what I actually needed was proof that the world could still be good. That people could still choose right over wrong. Clara gave me that. And I'm grateful every day. People applauded. I felt my face flush. But then Jacob continued. There's someone else here who deserves recognition. Someone who's working hard to become better than they were. Vivian Whitmore has volunteered over 500 hours at this center in the past year. She's shown up consistently, done hard work without complaint, and started the difficult journey of making amends for her past. Vivian looked shocked that he'd mentioned her. I'm not saying she's redeemed. I'm not saying everything's fixed. But I am saying that people can change if they're willing to do the work. And Vivian is doing the work. He looked directly at her. Thank you for showing up. Keep showing up. Vivian's face crumpled. She mouthed thank you, and quickly left the room. I found her outside, leaning against the building, crying. He acknowledged me, she whispered. After everything I did, he acknowledged my effort. He did. I don't deserve that. No, you don't. But that's the thing about grace. It's not about deserving. It's about someone choosing to see your humanity even when you've acted inhumanely. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Can you see my humanity, Mom? After everything. I thought about the little girl who used to help me in the garden. The teenager who wrote poetry in secret. The daughter I'd rocked to sleep and sang to and loved with everything I had. And I thought about the woman who'd thrown me out. Who'd tried to steal from me. Who'd nearly killed a boy and showed no remorse for 20 years. Both versions were real. Both versions were Vivian. I can see it, I said finally. It's buried under a lot of pain and cruelty. But it's there. And every day you show up and do good work, it becomes a little more visible. She hugged me then. Suddenly, desperately, like a drowning person grabbing a life preserver. I hugged her back. It wasn't reconciliation. Not fully. But it was a beginning. And after everything we'd been through, a beginning felt like a miracle. 2 years after Vivian's release from prison, she completed her community service requirement. She could have stopped volunteering at the center then. But she didn't. Instead, she approached Jacob and me with a proposal. I want to start a program specifically for people who've committed violent acts and are trying to change. A support group where we can talk about what drove us to violence, how to manage those impulses, how to make real amends. That's ambitious, Jacob said carefully. I know. But I think it's needed. Because there are people like me, people who hurt others and then have to figure out how to live with what they've done. We need help too. Not excuses, but actual tools for change. I was skeptical. And you think you're qualified to lead something like that? No. I'd need a licensed therapist to run it. But I could co-facilitate. Share my own experience. Be proof that change is possible, even if it's hard and slow and imperfect. Jacob and I exchanged glances. Let me think about it, Jacob said. A week later, he came back with an answer. I talked to our therapist partners. One of them is willing to lead the group if Vivian co-facilitates. We'll try it for 6 months and see if it helps. The group started small. Just 5 people at first. People who'd hurt others and were struggling with guilt and shame and the desire to be better. Vivian was honest with them. Brutally honest. She talked about her cruelty, her selfishness, her complete lack of empathy. She talked about how prison forced her to face herself and how terrifying that was. I still mess up, she told the group. I still have moments where my first instinct is to think only about myself. But now I catch myself. Now I stop and ask, how does this affect others? It doesn't come naturally yet. Maybe it never will. But I keep practicing. The group grew. Word spread that there was a place where perpetrators of violence could work on changing without being demonized or enabled. It wasn't easy work. Progress was slow. Some people quit the group. Some re-offended. But some changed. Really, genuinely changed. And that made all the difference. 3 years after the center opened, Howard called with news. Clara, you're not going to believe this. Reichman Mining found an additional copper deposit on your land. They want to renegotiate the lease terms. The new offer is $25 million over 20 years. I sat down hard. $25 million? Yes. Gerald really did leave you a fortune. I thought about what to do with that kind of money. The center was self-sustaining now, funded by grants and donations. I didn't need more than I had. Howard, I want to set up a foundation. The Gerald Whitmore Foundation for Trauma Recovery. Use the money to help other communities start centers like ours. To fund research on healing from violence. To support victims and give perpetrators resources for change. That's a beautiful legacy. It's what Gerald would have wanted. Not protecting people from consequences, but helping them heal after consequences arrive. The foundation launched a year later. By that time, Vivian had moved into a small apartment, gotten a job as a counselor in training at a rehabilitation center, and was living independently. We had dinner together once a month. Not as much as a normal mother and daughter, but more than I'd thought possible 3 years ago. Our relationship would never be what it could have been. Too much damage. Too many scars. But it was honest. And it was real. And for both of us, that was enough. One evening, as we finished dinner at a small restaurant, Vivian said something that surprised me. I'm grateful you let me go to prison. What? I mean it. If you'd bailed me out, if you'd used your money to make it go away, I'd still be that person. Cruel and selfish and completely self-absorbed. Prison was horrible, but it was also necessary. It was the only thing that could have broken through my defenses. I didn't let you go to prison to help you. I did it because it was right. I know. But it helped me anyway. Sometimes the right thing and the helpful thing are the same thing. She smiled. You taught me that. Finally. As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the revelation, the choices, the consequences. If I could go back and change things, would I? I didn't know. Gerald's secret had destroyed my comfortable lies. But it had also freed me from living in denial about who my daughter was. Vivian's crime had cost Jacob Webb his future. But it had also given him a purpose in helping others heal. My choice to release the evidence had cost me my relationship with my daughter. But it had also given her the only chance she had at real change. Nothing was simple. Nothing was clean. But maybe that's how real justice works. Messy and painful and complicated, but ultimately moving everyone toward truth. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at my small house. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't impressive. But it was built on honesty, not lies. On integrity, not manipulation. And after 79 years of life, I'd finally learned that was worth more than all the money in the world. Inside, I found a letter waiting for me. From Patricia Stone. Dear Clara, I'm writing from Colorado, where I've started working with a nonprofit that helps mining companies implement better environmental protections. It's good work. Work that builds instead of destroys, like you said. I wanted you to know that I think about you often. about the choice you made, about the grace you showed even to people who didn't deserve it. I spent 20 years being angry about what happened to Jacob. And all that anger did was make me bitter and manipulative. You showed me a different way. A way that acknowledges pain but doesn't let it define you. Thank you for that lesson. I'm trying to live it every day. With gratitude and respect, Patricia. I smiled and set the letter aside. Everyone was finding their way forward. Some faster than others. Some more successfully than others. But we were all trying. And in the end, maybe that's all we can do. Try. Fail. Get up and try again. Be honest about our pain and our mistakes. Choose justice even when it hurts. And leave room for the possibility that people can change, even when we've given up hope. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined for my life. But it was an honest one. And honest, I'd learned, was better than perfect. Because perfect was an illusion. A lie we told ourselves to avoid dealing with reality. But honest? Honest was real. Honest was freedom. And at 79 years old, I was finally free. Free from denial. Free from protecting people who didn't want to change. Free from carrying other people's choices as my own burden. Just free. I made myself a cup of tea, sat on my porch, and watched the stars come out. Somewhere, Vivian was building a new life from the ruins of her old one. Somewhere, Jacob was helping people heal from trauma. Somewhere, all the broken pieces were slowly starting to come together into something that, if not beautiful, was at least real. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you for joining Clara on this journey of betrayal, justice, and redemption. This story reminds us that choosing truth over comfort, justice over family loyalty, and honesty over convenience comes at a cost, but it's a cost worth paying. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think about your own choices, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next powerful story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and doing what's right? Your story might inspire someone else who's facing that same impossible choice. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, but also in accountability. And remember, the truth may hurt, but lies destroy. See you in the next story. Until then, choose honesty, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because that's when it matters most.